Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and to celebrate the last day of February, I thought it would be fun to share a video showing everything that's in bloom right now. Now, I'm located in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, which is about 20 miles south of downtown Raleigh. We've recently been reclassified as Zone 8, and this winter has been exceptionally nice. We haven't been extremely cold, but we also haven't been extremely warm. So everything is growing as it should. And I think that you're going to be inspired when you see everything that's blooming here in my home garden. It's camellia season, and right here we have a great Higo variety of Camellia japonica known as Happy. And I think it's a very appropriate name because you can't not be happy when you see this in bloom. Now over here, we've got the tail end of the flowers on Irrational Exuberance, which has been blooming for about 6 to 8 weeks. Beautiful flowers. Here we have Igawa 3 Seasons, again, coming to an end, likely won't be blooming much into the month of March. And across the way here, you can see the fallen flowers of Crimson Candles and the last of the blooms on those branches as well. This is totally normal for our region to have all of the camellias blooming in February, but I am happy to report that I do have varieties that haven't started to bloom yet, so we'll have more flowers to look forward to in the month of March. Now, I often get questions about why don't camellias have fragrance? And actually the answer is really simple. It's because these Asian native plants were traditionally bird pollinated. Birds don't have a sense of smell. What they need are big, showy, colorful flowers to alert the birds that those blooms need to be pollinated. So they evolved with the purpose of not needing to have fragrance to attract insects, which is precisely why these flowers really don't have any scent whatsoever. Now, in contrast, Camellia sasanquas do have kind of a musky odor, and that's because those fall blooming varieties were traditionally insect pollinated, both in their native environment and here in the US. In contrast, this Asian native, known as paperbush or edgeworthia chrysantha, is insect pollinated and it is super fragrant. I love it at this stage where you can get up and under and really see those beautiful balls of sunshine, and the smell is just like honey. Now, these are traditionally pollinated by bees, and though I don't see any right now, that's because it's a bit chilly here in North Carolina. These flowers are going to be finished very soon. This is the very tail end of their bloom. And then sometime in March and early April, their foliage will start to emerge right here from these growth points, and they will have beautiful silvery leaves for the rest of the season. But for today, I'm really enjoying these beautiful fragrant flowers. Edgeworthias are one of my all-time favorite plants, and certainly one of the reasons that I love to garden in the Southeast, because they grow so well here. And I do have quite a few in my collection. I wanted to once again show the difference between Edgeworthia chrysantha. This here is a cultivar named by Tony Avent called Snow Cream. And then next to it here, this much smaller specimen, this is what I still call Edgeworthia pepifera. And I think that it is a distinct species. Everything about it is significantly smaller. And you can see here, the blooms are so tiny compared to its cousin, Edgeworthia chrysantha. Both are fragrant, both are worthy of the garden, but if you want a really large, robust plant, Snow Cream is the cultivar that I would suggest growing. Now, I said robust, and I really did mean it. You can see how large the Snow Cream can grow. This is, of course, a plant that planted itself. It was a rooted cutting that I had growing in a 1 gallon. It rooted through the pot, and it's my happiest plant. It is growing in a French drain next to this garage. You can see all of the flowers on this plant, and the fragrance here is just intoxicating. Edgeworthias can be grown in full shade or full sun. You'll end up with a more compact habit if you grow it in brighter exposure, like you can see here. This is also a snow cream, but out in full sun. Now, they're also very tolerant of wet soils, but not necessarily bog conditions. Edgeworthia really want to be able to be well watered, but natively they grow stream adjacent, not in the streams, but where their roots can have constant contact with moist soil. Well, another favorite tree is starting to bloom right now. This is Mount Aso salix, also known as the Japanese pink pussy willow. You can see it's got these absolutely tender little catkins that eventually open just like this to show their pollen. And this is a plant that will get quite large. I've been doing some hard cutbacks on mine. I did not plant it in the right place. And I'd like to go ahead and get this propagated so that I could move it somewhere where I wouldn't have to manipulate the size. This little corner really wasn't the right decision. Nevertheless, I love this plant and I love to bring it in for flower arrangements to enjoy inside the house, as well as having it here in the garden. Well, I'm not ashamed to admit that I've never met a witch hazel that I didn't fall deeply in love with, and Helena here is no exception. Now, this tree is relatively small still. It's only been planted for about 2 years, but I think it'll be beautiful when it matures to really anchor this corner. And of course, these feathery blooms are super fragrant. And well, it's just overall one of the trees that I love most for late winter flowering. Now, my favorite witch hazel in my collection is Arnold Promise, named by the Arnold Arboretum, and it's just now starting to show its flowers. Oh, what I love about it is that lemony scent that reminds me of my younger days as a child when I would use Pledge to dust all the furniture. But I'll be showcasing this through the month of March because this barely even counts as a February bloom. Well, another great winter flowering tree with yellow fragrant blooms is Cornus moss. And as you can see, this has just started to bloom. And after it's flowering, it will end up with little red berries that bluebirds like to eat. This is a wonderful dogwood species that doesn't get enough attention, also known as the cornelian cherry. It's really easy to grow, and so far it's been much better for disease and insect resistance compared to the native Cornus florida. This is absolutely its normal time to bloom, nothing unusual about this at all. It's definitely a tree that I highly recommend. Well, I was so excited to see that my rosemary's in bloom, and though of course I grow it for its culinary purpose, I absolutely love these bluish purple flowers that the bees come to visit on a regular basis. It's just a terrific plant overall. Could have probably planted it a bit farther into the bed considering it's completely taken over this corner, but I'm not willing to disturb it because it's one of my favorite evergreen herbs to grow here in central North Carolina. Well, so far I've been showing you mostly woody material, trees and shrubs that are blooming in February. But now I want to showcase some of the herbaceous plants, particularly the hellebores, which are all in full bloom right now as we close out the month of February. Hellebores are the kind of perennial that you kind of have to get down on your hands and knees to really see, which is why I like to float their flowers so much. It's hard to see how beautiful and intricate these blooms are when they're nodding down. There are some new hybrids that are great improvements, like this one called Pippa's Purple, that have more upright blooms. In fact, you can even see this one is actually shining straight up into the sun. Now, all of these in this area came from Pine Knot Farms, which is a wonderful hellebore nursery located in Southern Virginia. And one of my favorites is this double with the dark purple edge. I think this flower is so exquisite and it's a wonderful addition to a floating arrangement. Now, there are quite a lot of different species of hellebores and then a lot of different hybrids. This is one that's more known as the Lenten rose, which is appropriate because I believe Lent has recently started, like last week. And you can see it's nicely flowering right now. And as you can see, they look beautiful in floating arrangements, and you can really enjoy all of those flowers when they are pointing upright. Now, one of my other reasons for doing this is to reduce seed set. Unfortunately, hellebores can be a little bit seedy, so by removing the blooms, you stop them from going to seed, thus eliminating their invasive quality. Now, here we have Hellebores fetidus, the stinking hellebore. And speaking of being a bit invasive, this species is really quite notorious. You see it sets lots and lots of flowers, but they're quite small and they all develop seed. And I have a great example to show you here of last year's seed that's all starting to germinate. You can really see why they start to develop an invasive habit, because that's a lot of seedlings. Now, the easiest thing to do is simply to remove them if they've gone to seed. But what's simpler than that is to actually just cut these stalks, bring them inside, and enjoy them as a flower arrangement. And then you completely stop the seed cycle. Well, another one that's blooming that falls into that invasive category is ranunculus. This is Ranunculus vicarii brazen hussy. And, you know, I originally grew this. It's summer dormant. I didn't even mean to bring it to this garden. I think it came in on the roots of something else. But it is such a cheerful little plant with these nice bright yellow flowers. These are another plant that are great for using in floating arrangements. And then, of course, you eliminate the seed set. You can see my original clump was there. It's now kind of spreading throughout this border. And again, if you don't dig it up now while it's actively growing, you won't see it because it will go dormant and you won't even know it's there until the soil temperatures get cool and it starts to grow out again. So this is a plant that I don't necessarily recommend for your garden, but if you have it and you don't want to go through the process of trying to dig it all out, the easiest solution is just to pluck these flowers off and make a beautiful arrangement using them. And since I am a food growing enthusiast, I can't ignore the beautiful blooms on the self-seeded arugula. I love that they are blooming in February, and the great thing is they're going to set their own seed, they'll deposit, and I'll have another crop to be able to harvest from without having to do anything at all. And of course, these are known as rockets because they rocket up to the sky. They tend to bolt really early in the season, and that's how you can get multiple generations to harvest. Well, I'd certainly be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the beautiful and prolific blooms on viola. And I grow quite a few different varieties you can see here. And they have been blooming all winter long. They're also edible. And, well, they just bring so much cheer. It's definitely a plant that I think everybody should be growing. Well, it's also the season for bulbs to start to bloom, and as you can see here, this big border of daffodils burst into bloom just so we can celebrate the ending of February. I highly recommend getting bulbs that will bloom at different times of spring so that you can really extend the season. This one is always the first to flower, and it certainly is my favorite to bring inside for cut flower arrangements. Nothing quite beats bringing the outdoors in. Well, everybody, I hope this video will be an inspiration for you, and I'm wishing you all the very best on this last day of February. The countdown to spring is really on now. Thanks so much for watching, and happy gardening.